Discover the miraculous kings and queens God used to transform Israel. Shocking truths revealed. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, with the nation of Israel yearning for a king to unify them under one banner, a young man stands on the brink of an extraordinary destiny. Saul, the son of Kish, is a Benjamite, tall and striking, yet a heart plagued with uncertainty. A quiet morning in the rolling hills of Benjamin casts a gentle light over his father's fields, where the beauty of the land belies the turmoil within his soul. Suddenly, the revered prophet Samuel, a man of God known for his unyielding faith, approaches him, bearing a divine message that will alter the course of time. It was not long before God spoke through Samuel, declaring Saul the anointed king of Israel. "This shall be the man whom I have chosen for my people," the Lord proclaimed. The sacred oil flowed down Saul's head, glistening like a beacon of hope against the backdrop of his rising fears. As he stood there, Samuel's voice echoed in the silence, and even the heavens seemed to hush in reverence. But, amid the thrill of kingship lay the ominous weight of expectations. Saul felt the surge of destiny clash against his honesty, the haunting thoughts of his inadequacy casting shadows upon the bright calling from heaven. As Saul wandered through the vibrant fields, swirling scents of wheat and barley enveloping him, whispers of God's will resonated in his heart. He could feel the weight of a nation relying on him, yearning for nobility, strength, and faithfulness. The grass swayed lightly, as if ushering in the echo of the divine, yet doubt whispered louder. Could he truly lead? Would he hold firm against the storm of enemies? In his heart, turmoil brewed, a testament to the call that awaited. But, will you obey? Echoed in his ears as Samuel imparted the true nature of kingship, with power comes obedience to God's words. Soon enough, the crossroads of faith arose when Saul faced the Amalekites. His disobedience would shatter his legacy, blessed by God yet prone to human frailty. The tension of his fallen choices and lost favor haunted him. God's rejection would linger in the gap between divine appointment and human choice, an unsettling reality he could scarcely face. Meanwhile, a contrasting figure emerges in the fields of Bethlehem, a humble shepherd named David. Chosen not for his stature but his heart, the young man captures God's attention. David's resolute spirit shines brighter than Saul's faltering trust, leading him to face the giant Goliath with stones in hand and an abiding faith that radiates through the valley of Elah. The air crackles as stone meets metal, a powerful testimony to the protection of the Almighty. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select All Notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. Yet, amidst this unfolding saga, danger loomed in Susa, where Queen Esther stood as a beacon of hope in perilous times. Her heart thudded as she understood her divine appointment: dare to speak in the king's court or remain silent while her people trembled on the brink of destruction? The intertwining of Saul's faltering compliance, David's unyielding faith, and Esther's courageous resolve weaves a rich tapestry of God's relentless faithfulness. But what shall become of Saul's kingship, David's rise, and Esther's boldness in the face of impending doom? Each step beckons a greater calling, leaving a lingering mystery. How will God fulfill his promise for Israel? As the winds of change swept across Israel, the hearts of the people remained restless. In the land of Benjamin, Saul stood poised with a crown that felt more like a burden than a blessing. His spirit was torn between the glory of kingship and the shadows of his fears. But soon, challenge knocked at the door of his reign. The dreaded Philistines, fierce in battle, gathered their forces against the chosen of God. The valley of Elah lay before Saul, a landscape laden with promise and dread. As the armies clashed, the cry of war echoed, and Saul's heart wavered. In the tumult of clashing swords and the roar of the masses, he found himself paralyzed by uncertainty. "What shall I do?" he whispered to the heavens. He remembered the words of Samuel, "The Lord does not look at the things people look at." People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart, 1 Samuel 16 verse 7. Yet his heart quaked, overshadowed by the might of Goliath, the exile of his own faith. In stark contrast, David, still but a shepherd, heard the call of his nation beckoning. The news of Goliath's challenge pierced his heart. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? 1 Samuel 17 verse 26, he exclaimed, igniting a flame of righteous indignation. Goliath's blasphemy against Israel stoked David's faith, propelling him toward destiny. With mere stones and a slingshot, David moved forward, trusting in divine strength rather than human might. Each step toward the battlefield resonated with a declaration of faith. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the valley, David approached the giant. Goliath boomed with laughter, a mocking thunder against the backdrop of silence. "Am I a dog, that you come at me with sticks?" he jeered, 1 Samuel 17 verse 43. The ground trembled as he threatened annihilation, yet David stood undeterred. His small frame, more powerful than the might of kings, positioned him as an instrument of God's will. "Today the Lord will deliver you into my hands," David declared boldly, sword and spear resting behind him. A simple shepherd, yet filled with the authority of heaven, he flung the stone swift and precise. The air shuddered as the weapon of divine destiny struck true. The fallen giant lay silent in defeat, and the armies of Israel erupted in victory, for God had wrought a salvation that echoed through generations. But as the cheers of triumph filled the air, back in Susa, Esther felt the weight of another battle. Her spirit called for intervention as she stood before King Xerxes. She pondered her fate, believing she was placed for such a time as this, Esther 4 verse 14. Would she have the courage to reveal her identity and appeal for her people, knowing that such an act could lead to her own demise? The interwoven destinies of Saul, David, and Esther cast a vibrant tapestry of God's sovereignty. Faith entwined with courage, frailty met with divine strength, and uncertainty clashed with the promise of delivered hope. Each sought to fulfill the call upon their lives, yet the trials they faced laid bare the depth of their characters. And as the narrative of Israel unfolded, the hand of the Almighty moved with purpose. The question lingered in the heavenly courts: how would God orchestrate the final redemption for his people? The winds whispered a promise their journeys were far from complete. The stage was set for a greater revelation, and the echoes of their faith would resonate into eternity. As the dust settled upon the valley of Elah, and the cheers of the Israelites rang out in jubilant victory, Saul's heart remained a tumult of emotion. He had seen a shepherd boy conquer a giant and yet was still ensnared by fear. "What shall we do now?" he questioned in the privacy of his royal tent, feeling the weight of his kingship grow heavier with each passing moment. Honor seemed to slip between his fingers like sand, as the people began to speak of David, whispering tales of his valor. Meanwhile, David returned to the camp, a humble victor adorned with the spoils of battle. Goliath's sword, a sign of God's faithfulness. The cheers of his brothers rang in his ears, but deeper still was the chorus of his heart. "For the battle is the Lord's," he proclaimed, 1 Samuel 17 verse 47, reveling in the realization that he, merely a shepherd, had been anointed for greatness. But the Philistines, emboldened by their shame, retreated only to devise another plan against Israel. They regrouped, their hatred burning anew, vowing revenge against the nation whose faith had humiliated them. The land bore witness to impending strife as their dark clouds gathered over Israel. Back in Susa, Esther braced herself for the trials ahead. Moments before entering the king's inner court, she invoked the depths of her faith, saying, "If I perish, I perish," Esther 4 verse 16. As the golden scepter extended, granting her favor before Xerxes, she grasped the weight of her calling. In this moment, Esther became not just a queen but a beacon for her people, her courage sparking hope where there was darkness. As David began to rise in prominence among the troops, Saul's jealousy began to fester. The praises of the people echoed through the halls: "Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. 1 Samuel 18 verse 7. The kernel of envy took root in Saul's heart, twisting it into a realm where shadows lurked. The calmness of the day shattered as Saul, overwhelmed with insecurity, began to plot against David. "What is this youth to me?" he mused, an uncomfortable ache gnawing at his mind. "Has my kingdom become a vessel for his fame?" He resolved to take matters into his own hands. A man driven by pride and fear, he could not see that he was dimming the light of that which God had ordained. As night fell upon the land, David found solace in the remnants of his song. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want," Psalm 23 verse 1, he whispered quietly, echoing his longing for peace. But with the promise of kingship came the shadows of strife. Little did he know, divine destiny was already threading a path through the trials ahead, a path of learning through hardship, a path leading not just to kinship but to God's own heart. Esther, now filled with divine courage, prepared her banquet, knowing the fate of her people hung in the balance, not knowing that her own destiny was intertwining with that of David. God's hand was moving behind the scenes, orchestrating a plan that transcended all human understanding. And far beyond what they could see, a promise began to ignite. For God had long ago declared, "I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you," Genesis 12 verse 2. As his chosen forged ahead, the tension rose, hearts entwined with the goodness of his purpose. Yet, the greatest test was yet to come. What redemption lay hidden in their trials? The covenant promise lingered, the winds carrying whispers of hope. Could their struggles forge something miraculous, revealing the very heart of God among them? In the days that followed David's victory over Goliath, the air was thick with tension and anticipation. The warriors of Israel celebrated, yet within the heart of Saul, jealousy began to fester into a deep-rooted bitterness. Day by day, he could hear the praises that rang like thunder across the mountains, and each cheer for David's deeds drove daggers into his pride. "Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands," echoed from every corner of the camp. The refrain tormented the king, for in this victory, he saw not just a young shepherd, but a rival who eclipsed him. The shadow of a great fear gripped him, and his heart grew hard like iron. In a moment of dark resolve, Saul called for David, wishing to quell the flames of envy swelling within. "You shall be my armor-bearer," Saul declared, masking his intent beneath a guise of mentorship. David, ever humble, obliged, understanding the honor bestowed upon him. Yet, within the depths of his spirit, there was an unease, a flickering warning that troubled his heart. At times when David played his harp to soothe Saul's troubled mind, the king's torment would subside, yet the peace was fragile. It was on one such occasion, as melodies intertwined with the shimmering twilight, that a sudden rage surged within Saul. Seized by a mad jealousy, he hurled a spear at David, narrowly missing as the young man leapt aside, his heart racing with disbelief. "Why art thou so troubled, my lord?" David cried out, but the words fell upon deaf ears, for Saul was consumed by a darkness that clouded his judgment. David fled into the night, escaping not just a spear but the evil that now clung to Saul like a shroud. Meanwhile, in the palace of Susa, Esther continued to gather strength for the impending confrontation. Darkness loomed over the land of the Jews, a decree of extermination hanging like a sword over her people. In prayer, she sought the guidance of the Lord, her spirit determined to act on behalf of her kin, her heart echoing, "If I perish, I perish." The cries for deliverance from both David and Esther ascended to heaven, intertwining their fates. David, hunted by King Saul, sought refuge among the hills and caves, gathering a band of the discontented and downtrodden. These men, weary and broken, found strength in David's righteousness and unwavering faith. He led them not with an iron fist, but with the tenderness of a shepherd, ever mindful of God's promise. As David roamed in the wilderness, unsure of his destiny, God sent a mighty prophet, Samuel. Anointed once more, he reiterated the covenant promise, "You shall be the shepherd of my people." But David knew that to become a king, one must first learn the trials of leadership, to endure hardships that would refine his character. Unbeknownst to both Saul and David, God's plan was unfolding in layers, each event a brushstroke in the grand tapestry of divine salvation. Hidden within the depths of their struggles was a truth yet to be revealed, the intertwining of two destinies, each confronting their own trials, yet both essential to the fulfillment of God's ultimate purpose. As the night air grew cooler, the call of destiny whispered through the valleys, beckoning them towards a truth greater than themselves. What marvelous work shall come forth from the ashes of their tribulation? The winds seemed to inquire, stirring hearts to ponder the depths of God's sovereign plan. In the days that followed, the pursuit of David became a relentless dawn for Saul, consuming him with shadows of madness. He gathered men, fierce and loyal, determined to stamp out the light that he deemed a threat. "Call forth the hunters," he commanded with a voice that rumbled like distant thunder. "Let none escape my grasp." Meanwhile, David, ever on the move, found sanctuary in the cave of Adullam, a refuge shrouded in darkness. There, in that shadowy sanctuary, he grappled with the deep anguish of his soul. He sought the Lord in earnest prayer, raising his voice unto the heavens, echoing the profound words of his heart, "Hear my cry, O God, attend unto my prayer." Psalm 61 verse 1. The darkness that enveloped him could not extinguish the light of his faith, for within his spirit burned the unyielding hope of God's presence. As he lingered in the cave, a multitude gathered around him, those beset by trouble, debt, or despair. And he became their captain. "Fear not," David encouraged, "for our God is a refuge in times of trouble." Such was the spirit of camaraderie that enveloped them, and together they would rise not merely as fugitives, but as warriors united by the unfailing promise of the Lord. In the palace, Saul's madness deepened. His servant, Doeg, the Edomite, stood before him, eyes gleaming with fervor as he reported David's whereabouts. "He has sought aid from Ahimelech the priest," Doeg informed, reveling in delight. Rage ignited within Saul once more, and with chilling resolve, he commanded, "Bring me the priest." Thus, Ahimelech, innocent and fearful, approached. "Why dost thou come before me, O king?" he asked, a tremor in his voice. Saul's fury ignited like wildfire. "Why have you conspired against me, you and David?" he roared. And though Ahimelech defended himself, proclaiming, "David is faithful, and your son-in-law," Saul's heart was hardened against reason. In that moment of dread and despair, the king's order fell like a hammer: "Put the priests to death." The priests, innocent of conspiracy, were slain, and the sacred blood spilled upon the ground, a bitter testimony of envy's price. Yet, amidst the chaos, one priest escaped, the son of Ahimelech named Abiathar. He fled to David, breathless and trembling, bearing the weight of sorrow as he fell at David's feet, weeping. "Alas! The house of Eli has been destroyed," Abiathar cried, revealing the dark fate of his kin. David's heart struck with sorrow and resolve. "Stay with me," he urged the priest, "for he who seeks to take my life seeks yours as well. We shall find safety together, for you are a trusted companion." As God wove their fates together in the tapestry of tragedy and triumph, David understood the heavy mantle he bore. Deep within the wilderness, he found himself shaping not just a band of men, but a people, revealing the shepherd's heart that God had cultivated within him. While David longed for peace, he knew this turmoil was not for naught. He remembered the words of the Lord whispered to him through the prophet Samuel, and clung to the truth that though trials lay ahead, God's purpose was ever present. "The Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear?" he declared, rallying the hearts of the weary. Yet unseen forces intertwined the fates of Esther and David, for unbeknownst to them, their trials were but a prelude to the divine orchestration that was to unfold. What rescue would emerge from their relentless pursuit? What sovereign hand would guide their destinies toward a climactic truth yet shrouded in mystery? The air hung heavy with anticipation as both journeys led toward a divine rendezvous, unraveling the depths of God's redemptive plan. As David and his band of weary souls navigated the desolate wilderness, they met with hardship that masqueraded as despair. Yet amidst the desolation, the heart of David remained steadfast in the Lord. They traveled southward, seeking refuge from Saul's relentless pursuit. "We shall not falter," David exclaimed, grasping the hand of Abiathar, "for the Lord our God goes before us." In the dark of night, he sought the Lord earnestly, whispering to the heavens, "Guide me, O God, and illuminate the path before us." He remembered how the Lord had once instructed him through Samuel, "You shall be shepherd over my people Israel," 1 Samuel 16 verse 11. This promise echoed in his spirit, igniting a fierce resolve to trust in the unfolding of God's redemptive plan. Meanwhile, the madness-consuming Saul found no rest. The stench of bloodshed lingered in his palace, a constant reminder of the priests he had slain. The echoes of their cries resonated within him, a torment only rivaled by the gnawing envy and suspicion he directed towards David. "I shall not sleep until I have extinguished this threat," Saul vowed, growing more delusional by the day, his heart hardened against the very Spirit of God that once rested upon him. As days turned to weeks, news of their plight reached the ears of loyal Israelites in distant towns. Whispers of David's valor began to ripple through the land. "Is not David the one who sang of victories over giants?" they murmured. "Shall we sit idly while the rightful king hides like a fugitive?" The people began to rally, drawn by the hope ignited by David's faith. Amidst this growing support, a light flickered in David's heart. Each new follower breathed life into his purpose, and once again he felt the spirit of leadership rise within him. One evening, while encamped at the edge of the wilderness, David took the opportunity to gather his men. "What shall we do in our time of need?" he asked, eyes blazing with resolve. "We may seem like outcasts, but our God has promised a future filled with hope. Let us stand firm against the darkness, for our deliverance is near." As his words ignited passion within his men, they pledged themselves anew to David, ready to face whatever would come. In the hills surrounding them, however, Saul plotted further treachery. A messenger from the Ziphites appeared before him, saying, "David has come to our land, hiding in the forest." Incited with renewed rage, Saul summoned his men. "Let us go into the wilderness. He cannot hide forever. With the hand of our king upon us, we shall surely prevail." With darkened hearts, they traversed the rugged terrain, following the sound of David's encampment like wolves seeking their prey. Unbeknownst to both men, a divine moment was upon the horizon. As David and his followers sought counsel and remained steadfast, the very skies whispered a promise of forthcoming deliverance. The earth trembled slightly beneath the path of the approaching soldiers. In a distant kingdom, hidden by time and space, an unseen hand was at work, preparing the hearts of those who would rise to greatness. Esther and David's stories weaving together in a magnificent tapestry designed by God's sovereign will. The air crackled with anticipation, the curtain of time was soon to be drawn back. What prophecy would come to fruition as these stories intertwined? What miraculous intervention would reveal the depth of God's sovereign plan? The stage was set, and the hearts of men were about to encounter the profound mystery of their divine calling. As dawn broke over the wilderness, the warm rays of sunlight painted the rugged terrain with hues of gold. David, awake before his men, wandered to a nearby stream, his heart heavy yet hopeful. In that stillness, he lifted his gaze to the heavens, praying fervently, "O Lord, you are my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust." Psalm 91 verse 2. The words rose from his soul, recalling the pain of his exile yet reminding him of promises unfulfilled. As he bathed his face in the cool waters, the sound of birds broke the morning silence, a reminder of the Creator's faithfulness. His spirit was uplifted anew, energizing him to lead his weary band. They needed encouragement, for the burdens weighed heavily on their hearts. Many were weary, not just in body but in spirit. Men of valor. David called, his voice echoing through the glade. Today, we shall rise and seek our God with renewed strength. For he has not forgotten us nor our plight. With each beat of our hearts, we breathe in faith, and with each step we take, we walk closer to our deliverance. His words stirred the hearts of the men, igniting their faith like dry kindling lighting a flame. They answered with shouts of affirmation, their spirits bolstered by the reaffirmation of their leader's devotion to God. Meanwhile, deep in the heart of Saul's camp, the air was thick with dark intentions. The king, now consumed by his obsession with David, paced within the walls, the madness cloaked in shadows. "The God of Israel has abandoned me," Saul shouted, clenching his fists. "But I will make a sacrifice, and with the might of my army, I shall reclaim what is rightfully mine." His vision of kingship became an idol, a throne built on violence and treachery, glory sought through bloodshed rather than divine favor. As the day wore on, Saul's forces, emboldened and fueled by the king's bitterness, closed in on the very heart of David's south hiding place. Movement in the trees alerted David. "They come!" he cried out, motioning with urgency. He called forth Abiathar, "Bring me the ephod." As Abiathar hurried, David sought counsel from the Lord, asking, "Shall I pursue this band of men, or shall I wait?" From the wilderness came the voice of God, speaking into David's trembling heart, "Pursue, for you shall surely overtake them and without fail recover all." With new vigor, David rallied his men. "This day shall be a day of victory. The Lord has spoken. We shall not only survive, we shall thrive." The men formed ranks, their faith strengthened like the walls of a city, and marched into the woods, following the very footprints of the enemy. In the distance, the glint of armor caught the sun's rays as Saul and his troops moved diligently, that fulfillment of dark desires leading them unawares toward their own fate. Little did Saul know that the pursuit heralded not just danger but the dawn of divine intervention. As the two parties moved closer, an unexpected event loomed. The Philistines stirred anew. A messenger dashed through the hills, urgency driving him forth. "Saul! The Philistines invade the land." Instantly, chaos reigned in Saul's camp, his focus diverted from David, needing to prioritize the defense of his throne. As David and his men marched, the news of impending conflict unfolded like a tapestry woven by divine hands, intertwining the fates of Saul, David, and an unborn queen, watching from the shadows of history. What would be the outcome of this celestial orchestration? Did God's plan run deeper than they could fathom? With the stage set for conflict, the question lingered: how would the Lord deliver his chosen ones while unraveling the twisted purpose Saul had once cherished? The whispers of destiny danced upon the air, pregnant with mystery, leading them all closer to the moment when the fullness of God's sovereign plan would reveal itself in stunning clarity. As David pressed onward, his heart surged with both anticipation and trepidation. He led his band of warriors into the thickening woods, every rustle of leaves igniting their senses. The voice of the Lord still echoed in his mind, guiding him with steadfast assurance. "You shall surely overtake them and without fail recover all." The path split before them, a haunting silence settling over the land, as if the very earth held its breath. "Stay vigilant," David warned, glancing over his shoulders at his men, their eyes sharp and determined. They sought not just victory but restoration of all they had lost: families, homes, and their honor. As night began to cloak the wilderness, David crested a small ridge and beheld the sprawling camp of the enemy. In the moonlight, he saw the flickering fires that danced like restless spirits, pulsing with the careless laughter of Saul's soldiers. "We are close," he whispered to Abiathar, who stood at his side, the ephod clutched tightly to his chest. "Lord, what is your will?" David prayed silently, seeking wisdom from the God who had continually shaped his path. His heart raced, for the very air seemed to hum with divine promise. In that stillness, a great fear suddenly swept over the enemy camp. As Saul pondered the impending invasion of the Philistines, dismay struck his men. The noise of skirmishers, the clash of swords, and anxious whispers reached David's ears. The moment was ripe, and he turned to his men. "This is our moment. The Lord has caused confusion among them. Let us act swiftly." The warriors surged forward, their spirits alight with courage. As they advanced, the cries of the Philistines began to mingle with the shouts of Saul's army. The darkness concealed their approach, and their battle cries rang out like thunder in the silence of the night. The men of David rushed into the fray, executing the element of surprise with divine precision. In the heat of battle, David fought with valor, anointed and emboldened by the Spirit of God. He felt the rush of divine strength coursing through him as he maneuvered, striking down foes with every thrust and swing. His heart ached not for vengeance but for the liberation of his people, the return of peace to a nation torn asunder. Yet, amid the tumult, something else stirred. From the corner of his eye, David caught sight of something extraordinary, the very hand of God moving in the chaos, turning the hearts of Saul's men against one another, mistrust blossoming in their ranks. Fear and confusion grew as they staggered under the weight of their own doubt. With triumph growing with each passing moment, David knew the battle was not just flesh against flesh, it was a reflection of the greater warfare within the heart of Israel. "O Lord, you are a deliverer," he declared, faith igniting in his voice. "You are our hope." But amidst victory and joy, a solemn realization began to crescendo in David's heart. Was Saul's downfall merely an answer to his own plight, or was it part of a greater divine orchestration? As the last echoes of battle faded, the realization dawned that what lay ahead might not only yield triumph but also a deeper understanding of what it meant to be chosen by God. As dawn broke, a heavy truth lingered in the air, entangled with the scent of earth and the remnants of battle. The sovereign plan of God was unfolding, greater than David could comprehend. Amidst victory, a silence beckoned, revealing the mystery of divine purpose. What further revelations awaited as David pressed forward? Would the fallen king's eyes be open to the fate of the throne, and what role would God's hand play in the unfolding history of his people? The destiny of Israel was at stake, shrouded in heavenly purpose. What prophetic events would manifest, drawing the threads of faith and challenge together in the promise of a new covenant? As the first light of dawn pierced the shrouded canopy of trees, illuminating the battlefield with a gentle glow, David surveyed the scene before him. The echoes of battle faded into a stillness that felt sacred, a moment frozen in time where victory and reverence intertwined. His heart swelled with gratitude, yet the weight of understanding pressed upon him. What lay ahead was not merely the reclaiming of families and possessions but a pivotal moment in God's divine narrative. The air was thick with the scent of victory and the remnants of conflict, yet David felt an unusual stirring within, as if the Lord was preparing him for an encounter that would seal the fate of Israel. He called his men to him, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and hope. "Brothers, we have reclaimed our lives from the hands of the enemy, let us not delay in seeking out our loved ones. For the Lord who led us in battle will lead us now in restoration." With renewed strength, they moved toward the heart of the Philistine camp, drawn by the cries of those who had suffered at the hands of their captors. The pillars of smoke still rose amidst the charred remains of tents, where the echoes of previous revelry turned into mourning. In the distance, a throng of familiar faces emerged, weary but resolute. David's warriors began to weep and rejoice, their hearts dancing in the light of reunion. Yet amidst the joy, Saul lay quietly in the remnants of his command. The once proud king, now stripped of his authority and dismissal of his own purpose, found himself on the brink of despair. The very shadow that had chased David was now darkening his own doorstep. The fate of the king weighed heavily on David's heart. For in every ascent of his own spirit, David felt the burden of empathy for the man who had once mentored him. As David approached, the man who had been his king and his enemy stood before him, gazing into the depths of his own failure. "Saul," David called softly, "the Lord has gifted us the victory. You are still God's anointed." But there was no reply, only silence hung in the air, thick with regret and consequence. At that moment, Abiathar stepped forward, the ephod still clutched in his grasp. "What is it you seek, David?" he urged, sensing the unrest. The question pierced the tension like a sharpened sword, and David turned his gaze upward, seeking counsel from heaven. "Lord, what would you have me do? Show me the path to healing, not only for a nation but for a king who has lost his way." He awaited the divine response with bated breath, recognizing that the heart of Israel hung in the balance of faith, forgiveness, and the sovereignty of God. As the sun climbed higher, the Lord stirred David's spirit and whispered to him through the rustling leaves, "Restoration comes not merely from the sword, but through understanding the depths of mercy and grace. For Saul's true legacy lies in the hands of the one who seeks to uphold my covenant." With the dawn of a new day brightening the horizon, David felt the weight of divine purpose settle firmly upon his shoulders. As he turned back to Saul, newfound resolve filled his heart. "Let us journey together, for the fate of Israel is bound by the covenant of the Almighty, and the restoration of the heart of a king may lead us to the restoration of a nation." And thus, the threads of God's plan began to weave through the hearts of all involved. For what would emerge from this collision of destinies? As the winds shifted, could it be that through Saul's despair, new prophets would rise? And in the shadows of their pain, would the blessings of a kingdom unyieldingly flourish? The path of divine revelation was just beginning to unfold, carrying them toward an unforeseen prophetic turn in God's intricate tapestry. As the sun illuminated the often clouded path of Israel, the promises of God began to unfurl before the people weary from warfare and strife. In the days following their great victory over the Philistines, David and his men returned not merely as conquerors but as instruments of divine restoration. As they traversed the land, a renewed purpose ignited within them, one that called for healing, unity, and a return to covenant faithfulness. David, bearing the mantle of leadership, felt the weight of both responsibility and compassion pressing against his heart. He recalled the tender psalm he had often sung in the fields, "Restore unto me the joy of thy salvation, and uphold me with thy free spirit," Psalm 51 verse 12. In those sacred moments, he understood that restoration would not come from conquest but through the embrace of mercy. On the horizon, even as Saul lingered in despair, a fading flicker of hope beckoned him forth. Still, his heart weighed heavily with regret. He wandered through the remnants of his fallen palace, where shadows whispered of lost glory and shattered dreams. The cries of his people had echoed for peace, and yet he lay entangled in his own despair. What now could redeem a king fraught with fear and anointing turned to ash? It was in this moment of desolation that David sought Saul, bearing neither sword nor spear but the heart of a shepherd. As he approached the abandoned king, he called out softly, "Saul, my brother, it is time for healing. Let us not be divided by what has passed, but united in what can yet be achieved." Saul looked up, his eyes clouded with sorrow, the silent battles raging within him a testament to the tension between hope and despair. "How can I stand before you, David? For I have sought your life. I have squandered my kingship in envy and rage," he lamented, tears pooling at the corner of his eyes. Yet within the depths of David's own spirit shone a profound truth. The mercy of our God is greater than our failures. Even in shadows, his light prevails. If you are willing, let us seek the Lord's guidance together. As the weight of their disparate experiences bore down upon them, a divine silence enveloped the air, thick with anticipation. In that quiet sacredness, Saul felt a stirring deep within. Could restoration be found not merely in words but in actions of humility and faith? Thus, together they entered the sacred tent, and David, with the priest Abiathar by his side, sought counsel from the Lord through the ephod. "O God of our fathers, guide us where our hearts are broken. Let us down the path that restores our nation," he prayed earnestly. And lo, the Lord spoke with gentle yet authoritative clarity. "Forgiveness shall be your offering. David, you shall shepherd not just the people but the heart of Saul. In this, you shall show them the greatness of my mercy." In response, David turned to Saul with these words, "You are still anointed, beloved of God, for his plans through you remain unfulfilled. Let us first speak with the elders of Israel, restore the faith of our people, and bring unity where division has taken root." Saul nodded slowly, recognizing the truth that resonated through David's words. Redemption awaited. As they stepped back into the light, the people of Israel gathered around them, confusion intertwined with anticipation. "Brothers and sisters," David called, lifting his voice above the murmurs, "we stand here today not as enemies, but as vessels of God's mercy. Our past does not define us. Look at what the Lord has done." His words ignited a flicker of hope among them, kindling embers of faith smoldering within their hearts. Taking a step forward, Saul declared, "I have walked a dark path, but today I seek the Lord's forgiveness, and I ask yours as well. Together we will reclaim our destiny." As the people responded in unity, a wave of reconciliation swept across the camp. The promise of God reverberated through the assembly, igniting the air with renewed purpose. Hearts long hardened began to soften, the covenantal love of their God found its place in the midst of uncertainty. In the days that followed, as David and Saul led the people with humility and grace, the nation of Israel began to flourish anew. They formed alliances and restored the worship of Yahweh, recognizing the need to return to their roots, to the very God who had brought them from bondage into freedom. And while David would ascend to the throne, he did so not merely as a king beloved but as a shepherd of souls guided by the lessons learned in both battle and harmony. The heart of Israel beat stronger than ever as their covenant with God grew deeper, fortified by the stories of faith reclaimed from destruction. Esther, her own journey intertwining with these very men, would soon rise, called to pivotal moments of courage for her people. As she faced the looming shadow of injustice, she would find strength in the legacy of reconciliation, the heart of a nation once again aligned with the sacred promises that God had vowed would never leave them. Thus, the tapestry of God's divine orchestration was woven through their trials, each thread representing the unfathomable depths of His love, mercy, and redemptive plan for His chosen people. In every heart echoed the truth of their journey: the Lord is faithful to restore, to unite, and to fulfill His glorious promises. Dear friends, as you witness the miraculous redemption of Israel, consider how God seeks to draw you into His story of love and restoration. So, I invite you, subscribe immediately to this channel to remain connected to God's transformative word. Leave a like now to spread His message through the algorithm and help others discover the power of His faithfulness. Comment below with your own reflections on how this biblical narrative has impacted your faith. And don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear God's truth, for in doing so, you participate in the unfolding of His kingdom. This is the moment to help spread biblical truth and touch souls where they gather. Together, let us proclaim the glorious works of our Lord.